Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Adrian Pelkus. I have a new product development plan I'd like to talk to you about tonight and share with you. After 30 years in product development and talking to hundreds and hundreds of you, there's a commonality of the steps that people have to go through. So I'm going to show you a plan which is a guide, an interactive guide, and it's in 5 steps that actually are about 42 tasks. What I'm talking about, I'll spread this up in just a minute, is a spreadsheet that I've created. It's an Excel format spreadsheet, so you can adjust all of these variables. You can put names of the people who you're going to put on your team, because it takes a team. You can adjust the timeline of how long things take. That could be 9 weeks. It's usually 9 months. It could be longer. There's 2 halves actually to this spreadsheet. The first half talks about how to physically go from your concept to be able to show off your device. Okay? The second half of this spreadsheet shows how concurrently, so at the same time you're developing your presentation that you're going to show somebody. The end result of this is that you'll be able to approach somebody and have a conceived, well thought out presentation and a working model and a great story all around the whole thing. Okay? The first spreadsheet, let's start at the beginning. You mentioned exactly the right things. As Mr. Kawasaki said, the biggest mistake an inventor can make is not capturing the idea. It's absolutely true. We have like 70,000 thoughts a day. So the chance that you have a winner is out there, but when you have one that keeps rattling around your head and it gnaws at you, I got to do something about this, write it down, at least write it down, because it's almost guaranteed by the end of the day you won't remember it. There's a whole way of keeping your ideas, so pick your favorite and go with it. The sketching, you're absolutely right about that. Your idea is verbal, it's also pictorial, graphic. Capture that. You went even further and said that you even done the patent search. That is exactly right. You can Google for patent searches. Now this is just preliminary. You're not going to go the in-depth route here. You're just doing quick searches to see what else is out there. The market research really quickly. Google it out. Is anybody on this track? If they are, start paying some attention who, what the prices are, where they're coming from. All right, the next thing is what you all have in your hands a copy of, and that is this new product evaluation matrix. Test matrix, excuse me. Before you go putting a lot of money into something that may or may not fly, let's start off right at the beginning. It's just a concept right now. You've done a little search to see if it's really out there or not. Okay, take a look at it 10 ways. Looking at it 10 ways allows you to score your idea objectively. Everybody loves their baby. Everybody thinks it's pretty. Well, this is being objective about it. Actually scoring this idea to see if it is worth developing. The first line on here, the estimated profitability. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 can be used as a multiple. In other words, if you think you can make a product for $1.17 and sell it for $11.70, that's a 10-time multiple. I just didn't pull those numbers out. Somebody approached me today, and those were the numbers. I went, good, that's a good start. Even if you get a 5-time multiple, that's really great. Why? Later down the road, if you're going to be talking to SC on TV type companies, they want grand slams and home runs, meaning a score of a 4 or 5 in profitability and acceptance. We'll get about that. Technical complexity. Obviously, the simpler something is, the easier it is to make it and get it out there. And the more complex, the harder. So it's a scoring system. If everything's off the shelf, that's a great advantage. If you're really creating stuff like research and development, that's going to take some time and be some trouble. Industry size, reason that's there, the saying goes, it's better to have a small part of a large pie than, well, all of nothing, but in this case, the industry size, if you can penetrate a billion-dollar industry by 1, 2%, you're in the millions. So there's a scale factor to be involved here. Score your idea based on how big is this market. Competitors, obviously, the more there is, the harder it's going to be to penetrate that market. Now, patents. this comes back to why you wanted to search those patents. If you find there's tens of thousands of patents in your area, you're going to be doing a lot of searching and finding out if you have freedom to operate, if you're clear to operate. So the fewer the patents, the better. This next one, the IP uniqueness, as part of the process, when you're comparing what you're doing and other patents that are out there, if you're finding nothing at all close, then you are in the extraordinarily unique. There's a bit of reading and studying to do, but you can quickly score this to see where you're standing there. Regulatory agencies. Why is this on there? Well, has anybody in here ever worked with the FDA? Let me tell you. Yeah, that's a hassle and a half, and then add, okay. Things like UL, CSA, they're typical. You submit things, they tear them apart and destroy every piece of it and give you a report back, and you pay enough, you'll get a license, you'll get a sign for it. If you have to go offshore, so on. Anyway, you get the idea here. The less regulatory agencies, the easier the flight's going to be to take off. Again, if you're doing something that's no one ever seen before, it's going to take a lot of vetting to prove it. So that's what this regulatory acceptance covers. If you're on the fringe of anything chemically, or you get the idea. You should understand what regulatory agencies are going to be controlling your product and your business. All right, development costs. Now that's a sliding scale. You can move that up and down. You might find that 5,000 is lunch money. You might find that that's actually borrowing on the house. You can move this scale around. The idea is to give yourself, you know, is this really going to be hard for me to do, or is this going to be easy? That last question is almost a trick question, because if you think you're doing $1 million of sales in the first year, you know, we should have a talk. There's reality checks to be done here. Once in a while it occurs, not often. So be realistic about that. Grade yourself. The reason I created this is I've had some of you come in with literally a box or a bucket or a notebook full of ideas. You are a creative person, no question about it. You are full of those creative ideas. We created this so that you can whittle it down to your top 3 and then pick the one that is the easiest for you to actually get going on. You know what a SWOT analysis is: strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats. You have to do this on yourself. What are you willing to do and put into it in time, and what's the commitment level? So here's a starting point. All right. That is part of this plan, because some things just are not worth developing, and I don't want to hear about you brushing a dead horse for a year. A lot of you do that, okay? There's times when a little bit of foresight here saves you a lot of money. We have seen over the years some of you spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you missed some of these first steps, and you've got nothing but a garage full of junk to show for it that you can't even sell at a swap meet. And after all these years, I actually have a little treasure trove of that kind of stuff in one of my rooms. And that's the sad truth of the fact that there's reasons for doing these things, so you don't waste that kind of money. Okay, well, let's get back into what this rest of this spreadsheet's talking about here. All right, if you've gone through this evaluation and you've got the warm fuzzy that this is really going to be something big and it is going to take off, it's really important nowadays for you to secure that IP. That is the provisional patent filing is the easiest way. Patent laws have changed since the American Invents Act, and now the law is anybody that hears your idea, if you haven't already filed it, they can actually go over to the computer, and $65 and a page of form later, they own your idea. Period. You can't do this little stick it in the mail and mail it to yourself thing anymore, and even the notebook that you used to keep and have people sign, and it's first to file. It's not first to invent anymore. Once you've filed, you can then express yourself a lot more openly and show drawings and show concepts and things to people, because unless they have a time machine, they can't date you back to your original filing date. The NDAs are still important if you have a business scheme or a plan that you want to keep secret, but having that provisional patent filed really opens your, gives you freedom to discuss your idea a lot more readily. All right. I put the focus group right up here because the definition for product development, which is in the back of the new product development plan, by the way, is bringing to market a customer-accepted idea from initial concept through design into manufacturing on a predetermined cost, budget, and schedule. Let's go back to the beginning of that sentence. To bring to the market a customer-accepted idea. Because if you bring to the market a product that isn't customer-accepted, you're just not going to sell any. It sounds that obvious, but again, many of you fall in love with your product ideas. You don't look at outside advice or suggestions, and you end up raising a dead horse. Doesn't go far. Take this step first on, because what you will learn could change the design, it could change the features, it could change the selling price, it could change your mind about if this product's even going to work or not. A case exists in point. I didn't bring it. A few months ago, a gentleman here in the group had an idea for a pair of chopsticks. It basically looked like a tweezer. And we quickly did a, hey, what do you think of this? And half of you thought this was cool, and the price you thought it might sell for was, attractive to think about moving it forward. We contacted and worked with our group, California Product Developers, and we created models, and we set up a focus group at a Chinese restaurant, and the thing flopped. Absolutely flopped. It had a score of 31 out of 100. And we found out, well, it was too hard to use, the food slipped. There's just a whole lot of reasons why it just was not going to fly. And if we hadn't done that focus group, we could have easily sunk 50, 100K into making tools and molds and started to go crazy on this thing. No, it wasn't worth it, and if it wasn't for that focus group, we'd have lost quite a bit. So there's the latest just case in point. A lot of you might have even witnessed this here in the last few months. That is the purpose of a focus group. All right, what's going to come out of that is you'll be able to chart the results, and you use that in the next step, which is when you start planning the concept. So we've already gone through the first two steps. You've captured the concept, we've analyzed the concept, now we're going to start planning for actually creating this thing, okay? So with the data that you just collected from your focus group, you sit down and we create a set of specifications that is what the thing is supposed to do and how it's going to do it to the best detail we can. And this is really, really, really important, because the next stages are where engineers are going to charge you money to make what you're telling them you want. And if you change the ideas of what you want, you're going to spend a lot more money, because going over it again is just duplicating all of it. I just faced a major disaster in the last, well, it culminated today. We came to agreement of how much they should be paying us. We developed a product that our client came up with, and when the day we delivered it, they went, oh, well, we think it should do something different. So I'm of the kind of person, all right, I'll do it, and we actually did it, and getting into it is getting even more complicated and more complicated. And sure enough, they're coming back going, and now we want to add another feature, and now we want to add another feature. Now we're adding a microcontroller to this thing. I mean, it was all real simple to begin with. So, boom, hard stop. I don't care if he's got a trade show in 2 weeks. Too bad. There's going to be another trade show. The saying in the industry is when you want it bad, you get it bad. Another example of this, a little detour here. Many years ago, we designed an alarm system, and it had motion detection and remote controls. It was a great, lousy thing. The gentleman, again, has a trade show. We are just literally just gluing the sides on, and the last thing to do was going to be, we were going to put on the little jack so the battery could get charged. Well, he came rolling in, no, I got to take it right now, I got a trade show. I'm all, the battery's only going to last like a day. He's all, that's cool, I'll bring it back. That's all he needed it for. Well, 2 weeks later, I get a letter from his attorney going, well, I went to all these trade shows and the thing didn't work, and now I've been torpedoed because the thing didn't work. It's like, we had it all recorded. Wrong approach, wrong step. Look, that's the specs, writing specs and approving. It's going to save us a lot of embarrassment both ways if those things are solid as rock. We cannot build to what's called a jello spec, and that's the term for something that it just keeps moving. If you keep changing your mind, we'll never accomplish it. We have a very not good thing to be involved with. So that's writing the specs. Next steps are, good. Next steps are,
question about the last
Sure.
Where do you get a focus group? I've never seen one.
Oh, well, there's
I'd love to
sure.
present to one, but well, what is one?
Well,
Where do you get it?
there are organizations. StatQ is a company that we've worked with. There's a group. There's an internet site called SurveyMonkey that you can join in for free. You can ask generic questions. Like for those chopsticks, for example, we could have put it out on there. Are you happy with the way chopsticks work now? Do you have problems using chopsticks? Do you wish there? You could have, in other words, you can create a questionnaire online, and it's called SurveyMonkey. That's one way to go. Otherwise, you can hire experts to do it formally. All right, our steps through it. Sketching the mechanism is really, you've already done this probably earlier on when you were doing your sketch and describe, but now you've probably got some more details that go into it. The mechanical engineer is the ME, and going to him with some sketches that you've created lets him see your idea, even if it's just cartoons. Great way to explain yourself. The same thing goes with the electronic engineers, the EEs. These are the guys that are going to want to hear what it is you think this thing should be doing. Now, by the way, this whole development plan is tailored around a simple electromechanical device. If yours doesn't have any electronics, skip those steps. All right. Sourcing components, breadboards, test. Let me show you something before I use words that just don't relate. By the way, how did I learn any of this, most of this stuff? Well, as a kid, if it broke, I took it apart. And as far as I could. You keep taking things apart until you see what's inside things. So there's a commonality. There's usually a case, some kind of circuit board, and this is on almost anything. Here's another little light. I've been working on some lighting projects, so we were trying to figure out what solar cells to use. Well, what better way to just like take something apart and go, that's what's in here, and you end up, this was easier earlier. Anyway, you find out that there's a circuit board, and there's a plastic casing, no matter what the thing is. So, yeah, a lot of my education, by the way, if you have kids, give them a screwdriver set, and when anything breaks in your house, go, here, Johnny, take it apart. Or Jill, sorry, either way. And that's how they'll learn what's inside things, what are made, how things are actually made. They'll start getting an appreciation for this. And you'll be amazed at what they start doing once they realize how things are actually made. So, when I talk to you about the circuit board, those are these usually little green things that have power going to them, and they control how something works. Okay? When we talk about how you make these things, you see the next thing on here is sourcing components. All right, so let's start with what the electronic engineer is doing. He's looking at what the functions are, and he figures out, all right, I got to run a display, I need to change some inputs, I need to control some power, and so they design a little circuit. Designing a circuit starts with the idea of what components are going to be necessary. As engineers, we understand the science. We have, over the years, come to get familiar with a lot of similar components. This is how most things are designed. And it's a matter of combining these components to create what's going to be a working system or a circuit. So the first stage is something like this, a schematic that takes what the major components are and what the auxiliary components are, and by the time you're all done, that's called a schematic. Next thing you have to do to create a circuit board is lay out the circuit board and do what's called artwork. Now, as I'm going through this, if you're wondering how am I going to remember all that, that's why it's in a book. Every one of these things I'm describing is written out in full with basic language, and it's in essence the whole process with descriptions, just like I'm giving you now, you in a little bit more detail. So you don't have to be scribbling notes as fast as you can right now. You can pick this up later. Laying this out is a matter of physically showing where those parts are going to go, and then there's another process where we connect the dots with the wires. Those are those little lines on these circuit boards you might have seen. Those are called traces. When it's all done, We set that out, we get the circuit boards made, we get all those parts ordered in, we put it all together with a case, and you actually have a prototype. This was and is a handheld laser device that we can't sell in the US because the FDA doesn't like you to use light devices because there's so many drugs that you can take instead. This device is being tested by a doctor in the Philippines who's written books on using it on acupuncture points, and he's doing amazing work with it. So this is a laser handheld device, as it's called, if you wanted to know. All right, so now you know a little bit more about what those names are called here. Designing the circuit board, we design mechanics, we get these things quoted. SLA mechanical parts is the world of 3D printing, and that case was actually off the shelf, but many times we're actually 3D printing the case that our circuit board goes in, so that when we're showing this in our presentation, it's not just a mock-up, it's a full working model of what the real end device should look like. Those 3D printing is done again after the mechanical design work has been created, because the mechanical design work are the computer files that parts are made from. Assembling the boards, building that first model, testing the first model, you've now gone from I had an idea to here's one that works. What are you wondering right now? How much is that going to cost? That varies. Complexity varies. Putting a microprocessor in something really adds quite a few thousand in software costs. It's what's called non-recurring engineering. It's a one-time, you pay for the development. You're going to be amortizing that expense into your sales later, and that'll be a micro fraction of what your profits will be. But the upfront costs on circuit design and PCB design and software programming are all usually quoted separately. Billing rates are usually $85 to $125 an hour for these kind of engineering skills. Most software projects are, they begin at around a $5,000 level and go up. That is to design the code and program the little microcontroller chips that make these things work. Again, once that work's done, it's paid for, but there's an upfront cost. Same with your mechanical design. The costs for 3D printing are usually in the hundreds of dollars rather than the tens of thousands that it used to cost for hard tooling, which is a great advantage, but nonetheless it's still a cost. All right, so at the same time, now let's talk about the actual presentation you're going to be giving on this thing and how you're going to get there, okay? The presentation is a little bit about your product idea, a little bit about you, a little bit about your business plan, your financing plan. It's a number of things. You're going to have to convince somebody that you have a worthwhile idea. Even if you're just going to license it, you're going to have an opportunity to present. Usually it's 5 to 8 minutes, and there is a methodology to this. Before I even begin the path of this, the methodology for all your presentations, which will be described in another book, people have so many emotions, everybody on the earth, and you are needing to connect to people on an emotional level to start. If you start off by intellectually talking about the science, or if you start talking off about the money you need, this is the wrong approach, and people shut you off very quickly. The most successful approach is getting people to warm up to you by sharing. Really, people are empathic. They'll share the pain that you're experiencing or that you've come to understand. Whatever the problem is that you've come up with a solution for, you want to start off by sharing that with somebody so they can relate. So you start from the heart. Once you get their heart to open up, then you can go to the mind and start expressing how you've got the solution. Exciting as it is, you've got this new tech, you've got this new product, whatever that is. Their mind's going to open up that, wow, there was a problem with this person, has come up with a great solution, and I should listen more. Then you can start moving into the idea that, hey, I'm looking for funds, and it wouldn't be a great thing if we can get this going and you can help me on that. So that's the overview of this. But let's begin. What is it that you're going to be presenting to them in 8 minutes or less? It's usually a little PowerPoint presentation. So this is really how to get that PowerPoint presentation all together and what it's going to have to entail. All right, let's start. You need to have some sort of brand, a logo, whatever it is that you represent yourself as. Even if it's just your name, jazz it up, but create a logo that's going to go in your presentation that represents you or your new business. You can file that as a trademark if you've had a focus group on it. That's especially useful. If you haven't had a focus group, picking a logo is really a little premature because, again, the focus group will tell you what people's likes are as far as styles and colors and all those wonderful things. But you can start with something very simple. If you have more impetus to create something more artistic, get it filed because, again, you're going to be putting this in your presentation. You want to put the little TM next to it saying this is real. Got to know your market. You just got to. When you do your presentation, you want to sit there and talk to experts who are going to be on their side of the table and not know their business. Know their business. Know what their sales are. Know what the sales prices are. What the trends are on some of their products. The who is they. Well, know who your competitors are. Again, what their price points are and how they're selling things. At some point, you're going to be able to compile all your costs. Your slide presentation, you're going to have to show people what the pain is, how your solution solves that, and where the profits are going to come from. Those are the three big things for a license agreement. If you're going to try to raise money to start a company, you're going to have to add to that who's on your team, their expertise and yours, and then the use of funds, return on investment. Those are all the big financial pages. Most investors do want to see that you understand your market well and that you do know your competitors very well. So gathering some background information so that if you get in a conversation, you're not, I don't know. Know your market. Be an expert in your domain. Even for a license agreement, it's worth that homework for you to know how the business you're in is going to run. Formulating all the costs. All right. Listing the possible partners. You're in this path right now. You've done some patent search, which, by the way, that right there might lead you to some possible partners. A patent on the very cover has the names. It has what's called the assignee. This is somebody that the inventor has partnered with to bring their product to market. That might be a company that is in this business and is looking to bring more products to market. So there could be one of your first sources for partners, is right off of the patent search. Looking into the market, by now you've got to create your marketing plan and design some of the materials for the marketing plan. Materials are the trifolds and banners or whatever it is necessary, the materials and artwork that you're going to use to present your idea. All right. PowerPoints are like this, getting very common. Try to be creative. What's really important in your presentation, and I'm going to tell you right now how this plays in, is the video that you're going to have to create. Almost every good pitch nowadays has got that 1-minute video in it. It's a comparative video. It shows your product and somebody else's product, and it's just like a mini infomercial. You've seen them on TV. You can't cook an egg without a magic pan anymore, right? A lot of times they'll show you in black and white how horrible it is to do something the way it's done today, but your idea is so fun, it's in color, and there's kids laughing and balloons. Anyway, it's you do a comparative video. You're showing the process that or how your product works and how much better it is. So where and how does this all add up? You're going to put that into your PowerPoint. When the time comes to present, I'm going to speed this up. You're going to have already made the contacts, which sometimes takes more time than anything else you've done up to then. We had one of the inventors of our contest here a couple of years ago, invented a very cool little basket that would fold out and go behind a chair and behind a drawer, and it was very clever. It took him 1.5 years to find somebody to actually license that from him. So the sooner you get started on that hit list of who your presenters are or plan the trade shows you might be going to, the better. All right. When you have the time to set up and you're actually invited in, you're going to come in, you're going to introduce yourself not as an inventor, because inventors are, you're going to introduce yourself as a product developer or an entrepreneur. there'll be introductions. You're quickly going to start again by going to the heart and say, well, thank you for having me here. I've invented this great new widget. Oh, how many of you had this problem where you're doing this and this happens and it's a real pain and you really don't have a solution that's really easy to use except kludging it this way? Well, I have the solution. I call it the Whiz-Bang 1000. Here's how it works. You hit that video. Now, they've gotten the introduction, they know what the pain is, you know they have a solution, you've seen the video, it says the same thing over again. It's comparatively showing what doesn't work now, how yours works better. That only takes a minute, maybe a little bit more. The point after that is to assure them that there's very little risk here. Your two big obstacles when you're talking for a license agreement, when you're sitting at the table, is people are going to wonder, do you own this idea and can I make money? So, you're going in and explaining to them, you've developed this idea, do add it's patent pending. Pardon me for not having mentioned that. And you can mention that again at this stage too, after you've done your video, saying, and so with our patent pending device, now here's the next point. We have done a focus group, very important now, you are not the only person who's thought about this. We've done a focus group, and out of 100 people we found, and hopefully now is a really nice percentage, like 78% or more, would 70% of the people would like one of these things and they would buy one, and the pushback price was this, explaining what that pushback price is. Conclude by saying, and so with a price of $19.95 and a projected manufacturing cost of only $1.90, we have a 10-time multiple here. Now, your company, as we so respect and know, has been in this industry and sells products in this line, and we think it would be a perfect match for your line. We'd like to offer you an exclusive right for a certain amount of time for a certain type of performance. The ball's in their court. Now, I'm just paraphrasing. If you really want to see the master tell you how this works, it's next month. That's Stephen Key. I have gone through this. I'm paraphrasing, and that is fairly accurate what the procedure is that you're going to have to go through. So that's what this presentation, planning this presentation, is to have all those pieces and all that homework done so that you can have those 8 minutes and then follow up with a few questions that open up to hopefully a whole hour worth of, well, how can we get this going? And really in-depth questions that show that they have a real interest. Okay? The presenting the presentation, there's a number of ways to do this. Again, there are some licensed firms. You can hire agents. I'll tell you the truth, though. There's no better cheerleader for your product than yourself. You've got the passion, and no matter how nervous you are, that's expected to some extent, and practice makes perfect, so you can really avoid that with enough practice. Planning the approach. You have a couple of different ways, again, to do this, being it be through a trade show, through introductions. Introductions are the best quality, then cold calling. But figuring out how you're going to approach it, who you're going to approach, and making that list, and then committing to it and actually doing it is the follow-through. Once the meeting is set, you're going to need to practice, practice, practice. Videotape yourself. Watch how you are actually presenting yourself. When you're happy, it's ready to go. Okay? Now, the new project development plan has this list, and it has a checkoff sheet associated with it. As you go through each stage, you can mark it off. Again, it allows you to customize for the people that you're bringing on your team with the different disciplines, whether it's engineering, or if it's sales and marketing, or if it's artists or craftsmen. So this is a start from your initial concept to presentation ready, as we call it, okay? So, folks, that is the new product development plan. Thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, sir.
At the last few steps there, you have spent a lot of money, and you need to be very careful that you have enough money to get a patent attorney hired there, because your provisional patent only runs for a year,
Mhm.
and if you don't have the patent written and filed, at the end of that year, you're in deep whatever. So I think your presentation ought to hire a patent attorney in that last set of steps.
Oh, well, okay. It was actually way up at the beginning, and yes, you are correct. The year provisional goes by very quickly. You're correct. But if you follow this plan and you have your first couple meetings towards the end of the year, you'll know if this is going to go somewhere or not. That's when you can spend the money on that patent attorney, because you then have a clue that there are some possible sales involved. Marketing is the horse that pulls the cart. Getting a patent and building something and all that, if that product's not going to sell, why do any of that? Why? So what all I've described to you right now is how to bring it to where you've got a working model you haven't spent a whole lot of money on. You've got the provisional patent that allows you to talk about it. You've got some idea of the business, and you're ready to start pitching it. If you're out there and you're pitching it and it's just dead cold and you're not getting a response, you don't have to spend a lot more money, because it's probably not worth patenting.
I can tell you from experience, it's very hard to get all of that stuff done in less than a year.
I've seen people do it in 9 weeks. So it's a matter of complexity and how much of a team you have. I grant you that. I work on very scientific things that take me a decade. And I have multiple patents, and yes. Yes. But the funding comes when you can actually present something. Even if it's friends and family, if you've got it thought out well enough to where you can do a little presentation, there's again the starting point to where you do get the capital to move on. We're going to talk about Kickstarter later, but this is still all necessary for you to do a Kickstarter campaign as well. Kickstarter uses that video to be the key element that attracts people onto your campaign. A lot of people nowadays use the Kickstarter, and that gives some of the funding even sooner than later. Any other questions? How many of you have taken little things apart to see what's inside? That's the spirit. That's the spirit. Okay. All right, well, other questions here? Okay. That is just the summary of what's about 28 pages of the 42 steps that I've described in the new product development plan. So far, good reviews. Again, I designed this for people who have never experienced or seen what product development is, on through to people that have gone through it a little bit of ways and want to see where the next steps are. I hope you get something from that and have a better understanding of the complexities of bringing a product to market. Once you have a plan, though, it's not all chaos. It is actually a step-by-step plan, and one thing follows another. So there you have that.